应大德身体，自发挥其一切众生，经转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生多斯离苦得乐，速证无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth. Could you turn down the volume a little bit? Yeah. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto sucedoye alahadi samyao sambuddhoche.
Namo saranto sucedoye alahati samyao sambuddhoche.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in 100,000 million eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. All Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Masters, fellow Dharma Masters, and good and wise advisors, Amitofo, welcome to tonight's Sutra lecture at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. Today is it's November 14th, 2015. And we're here about to open and investigate the Sutra of Infinite Life. The Buddha speaks of the Infinite Life Sutra. We're still working on the actual translation of the title, so we'll work that out over the next, you could say, months. But this is the sutra we'll be lecturing on. And to begin, because it's particularly dedicated to the Amitabha Buddha, the sutra describes Amitabha Buddha's cultivation and how he created the Pure Land. We begin by reciting a homage to the ocean-wide lotus pool assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So if I can invite you all to recite with me the Chinese, it's Namo Lianchi Hai Hui Fo Pusa. We do it all the time in the monastery, so if you can join in, we'll do it for 7 times. And then afterwards, we'll recite Amitabha Buddha's name for a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And this way we can settle our mind and invite, you could say, the energy of Amitabha Buddha, the kind of limitless life, limitless light that he embodies and represents. In this time, I think people who are actually in California, I don't know so much if they're around the world, right now it's getting very dark, very early. You know, if you look outside right now, it's pitch black. And so when it's pitch black outside, if we can keep Amitabha Buddha's recitation in our hearts, then we have limitless light inside. So it's dark outside, it's light inside. And so it's no problem. Right? So we'll recite 7 times Namo Lianchi Hai Hui Fo Pusa, and then we'll recite Amitabha Buddha's name. Okay. So please join in when you get the tune and you have the sense of what we're reciting. 南无莲池海为佛不在，南无莲池海为佛不在，南无莲池海为佛不在，南无莲池海为佛不在，南无莲池海为佛不在，南无莲池海为佛不在，南无莲池海为佛不在。南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛。
诸佛菩萨，先公上人，
可以，可以，
各位法师，
可以，
呀，
听到。
好，各位在座的善知识以及线上的善知识们，大家晚安。我是进佛，晚上跟大家一起来，还是一样的研究无量寿经的一个经体方面的。那这个我们已经有几个礼拜都在探讨这一些，就是前方便，然后我们现在也慢慢走进了这个无量寿经的这个经名，然后我们还是后面还很长的路，佛法是真的是要长远心来修行的。
Venerable Master, Dharma Masters, and everyone here tonight, as well as all the Dharma friends online, welcome to our evening Sutra lecture. My name is Jin Fo. Jin Fo is Jin Fo on my left. I'm the translator, Jing Tuan. And tonight we'll be lecturing on the substance, you could say the substance of the sutra, of the Limitless Life Sutra. These past few weeks we've been giving some, you could say, preparatory introduction to the sutra text. And so tonight we'll continue to do so. We'll investigate a little bit into the name of the sutra. So as we listen to the sutra, this sutra, you could say, it's a long road. You know, to investigate the sutra, it's a long road to travel. But when we study the Dharma, we want to have a persevering mind. We want to really be patient and vigorous and keep on going.
所以在无量寿经的经题就是佛说无量寿经，所以我们今天晚上重点也一样的来介绍这个佛就是阿弥陀佛，这不是释迦牟尼佛他说的这个无量寿经，所以我们今天晚上会比较重点介绍在释迦牟尼佛的这一些方面的。
So tonight, the sutra is on the name of the sutra is the Buddha speaks on the Limitless Life or Infinite Life Sutra. And so tonight we'll talk about that the first word in that title, the Buddha speaks, Buddha. And this Buddha refers to Shakyamuni Buddha. And so we will investigate, you could say Shakyamuni Buddha.
这个解释这个佛字呢，我们中文是叫做觉者，那英文就是布达，那南传方面它也是叫佛陀。那我们先公上人他跟他解释的布达就是不大不小，恰恰刚好，这个是非常很恰当的来解释，因为他这个佛性就是适合我们每一位众生的一个开示方面或者是各方面都是非常适合我们每一位众生，所以小的众生、大的众生都一样的，就是刚刚恰恰好都能够在很圆满的来的一个佛性。
So the word Buddha in Chinese is Fo Tuo. In other languages, for instance, in Sanskrit it's Buddha. In English we're also translated as Buddha. And the Venerable Master had a very good explanation for what the word Buddha means. In Chinese, he explained it as Buddha. Buddha. Right? It sounds very much like Buddha. And the reason Buddha literally translates to not big. And so he says the Buddha is not big. right? And he also says the Buddha is 不大不小，恰恰刚好，恰恰刚好。Basically, not big, not small. Cha cha is like just right, just right. Cha cha gang hao, just right. And it says the Buddha. That's a really good explanation because the Buddha isn't big, he isn't small. He is just right for every living being. He responds to the Buddha nature in all of us, regardless of how small or how big we are. We are able to, have a response with the Buddha. He is perfect, complete. He's not big and he's not small.
释迦牟尼佛成佛以后，然后天人都非常尊敬他，所以他可以说天中天。然后他在我们世界上是一个开悟的人，是一个有圣贤的人，所以也叫做圣中圣。然后他在我们三界，他在跟我们讲所有的诸法，所以他讲的法都是非常圆满究竟，所以他是三界的法王。
So in terms of the Buddha, the devas, the gods, they all really, really respect him. And so he is considered somebody who is respected by all the devas. In addition, he is a sage among the sages. A sage, often we refer to somebody who is awakened, an enlightened being. So among the enlightened beings, he is really, really enlightened. And within the three realms, the realms are the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realms. We're in the desire realm, right? The gods are in the form realm and then the formless realms. He teaches the Dharma, and he teaches the Dharma that is ultimate and transcends completely. And so he is said to, in the three realms, he is the Dharma king. He is the Dharma king of the three realms.
释迦牟尼佛我们来了解一下他的家世方面。释迦牟尼佛他的书名是悉达多，然后他父亲是净饭王，他母亲是摩耶夫人，然后他的妻子是耶输陀罗。这个耶输陀罗是其实他也是讲起来也是他的表妹，然后他也有生了一个孩子是叫做罗活罗。
So for understanding Shakyamuni Buddha, maybe we want to first look into his family life, his family. So before he became Shakyamuni Buddha, he had the name Siddhartha, and he was a prince. So he's Prince Siddhartha, and his father was a king, and the literal translation is pure rice king. I don't know if people know the Sanskrit. I think it's something like Sudodana. Sudodana. Do people know?
Siddhato.
Siddhato. It's something similar to that. And his mother was named Lady Maya. That was his mother's name, and his wife was named Yashodhara, who was I think has some relationship to it, maybe like a cousin of some relationship. And his son that was that he had was named Rahula.
那佛陀他出生以后，就他7天以后，他的生母就死掉了，就是摩耶夫人就往生了。那就有他的姨母，就是他的应该是妹妹，就是摩耶夫人的妹妹，就她叫做婆舍婆提，她就是把释迦牟尼佛养大，所以后来这一位姨母也后来她出家了，就是变大爱道，所以 他也是算佛陀那时候一起出家的。
So the Buddha's mother, Lady Maya, died 7 days after the Buddha was born. And so the Buddha was raised by you could say a stepmom. And the stepmom was the younger sister of Lady Maya. I believe her name was Mahapajan. Do people know her name?
Bodhi?
Bodhi. That's a Chinese. But she basically raised Shakyamuni Buddha from a little boy.
释迦这2个字呢，它的意思就是能够能忍，它就是说他非常有能干，然后非常仁心的。那摩尼意思就是寂寞，就是他能够证到正果，然后到涅槃，这个就是摩尼的意思，就是释迦牟尼的意思。
So the name Shakyamuni Buddha or Shakyamuni basically has can be broken into 2 pieces. Do people know what Shakya means? Anybody? Jin Fo Shr just explained it as Shakya means 能忍, able to be patient. You say able to endure, 能忍. So a kind of perseverance, a kind of patient mind.
Not only person, also
capable.
人心.
人心, oh, very humane, very humane and kind, and benevolent, caring. And then the other one, Muni. Muni actually in Sanskrit literally means sage, but here it often means a kind of stillness, a kind of silence, a kind of quietness, a tranquility. And so Shakyamuni Buddha, for the Muni, it represents that he realizes Nirvana. He's able to be completely liberated through this ultimate stillness of mind.
那时候释迦牟尼佛他是生在北印度的迦毗罗卫国的就是算尼泊尔南部的地方。那时候他妈妈要就是怀孕以后要回去娘家里，去那里，那是一个就印度的俗习，他要回去那边去生产待产就对了。那他途中呢，就是在蓝毗尼园无忧树下在那里就是出生了这个太子，就是我们的释迦牟尼佛悉达多太子。
So Shakyamuni Buddha was born in a country called Kapilavastu. If people got the Sanskrit names better than I do, please let me know. But I believe it's Kapilavastu. And he was born in, this is probably where we would think is southern Nepal now, southern Nepal. And his mother actually that was the country he was from. But his mom was going off back to her hometown to give birth to him. And on the middle of the road, on the way home, she actually stopped in a park, and that's where Shakyamuni Buddha was born.
那时候的依照说法，就是在西元前623年前，这个是南传方面的。其实这个也是算起来也比较接近那现在是2015年，就是加起来就是差不多在2700年前那时候诞生的。
说那是南传算的。
南传的，
南传的。
Yeah.
623.
Yeah.
Okay, so for some records here from the Theravada, they place the Buddha's date of birth in about 623 BCE, before the Common Era, And so if you think about 2015 now, it comes out to be a little bit less than 2,700 years, if we use that particular way of counting.
那我们也来介绍一下佛陀出家的因缘。佛陀他小时候就是他爸爸净饭碗请了婆罗门来教导所有的知识还有武艺，他都非常精通。然后像他很早的时候就有非常慈悲心，像12岁的时候，他也出去看见这个外面的一些情况，像农人那时候也很辛苦的工作，然后在田里面，当然那时候像农业社会，那有出去城门外面就是农田，他看到因为做农的时候都有很多的鸟飞来飞去，然后再看到鸟吃一些虫，就是虫被鸟吃，然后后来又看到一只飞鹰来把这个鸟又把它抓来吃，所以他就觉得这个世间是非常，就是来残杀这样子大吃小，然后他就觉得非常难过。
So, the Buddha, growing up in the kingdom, you could say, got a very good education. His father hired a Brahmin as a tutor and taught the Buddha all sorts of different knowledges, the martial arts, the various things that you have to learn as a prince about, the kingdom and so forth. And so he was very, very, you could say, smart and very, very quick learner. So he mastered all these things very quickly. But in addition to his knowledge, he also had a very compassionate heart. At the age of 12, he saw a situation. He was out in the fields. If you imagine that during those times, it's a kind of an agricultural country, right? It's more agricultural. So somebody was working in the farms, working the land, and he saw a bird, and the birds are flying around, and was eating an insect that was crawling around. And the bird ate the insect. And then he saw an eagle, a big eagle, come down, swoop down, and eat that bird. And so he was watching this. The big animals eat the small animals, the smaller animals eat the even smaller animals. He thought, this world is very cruel, it's very painful. And so he had that, he had that reflection at a very young age.
在17岁的时候，就净饭王就给他娶了太太，也是陀罗。据资料上，他这个当时他总共有跟他有了3位妃子，就是3位太太。那这个也是陀罗是算比较大的、最漂亮的太太，所以那时候而且他净饭王就是说他将来可以成为一个很好的一个国王，不要因为他也是怕修行出家，所以就给他非常好的像有3个宫殿啊，然后因为春夏秋冬啊，就有不要给他好的，不要给他受到什么着凉啊或太热啊，所以总共有3个宫殿，然后有3个太太来服侍他，他每一个的服侍的太太有2万个才女，所以总共有6万个才女。就是才女就是来侍奉一些 宫里面的事情的女人。
Say servants?
Yeah.
Servants, okay. So, at 17 years old, his father had him married and to a wife named Mishodara, which we mentioned before. And the materials here, I have, it says that he actually had 3 wives, that his father had him have 3 wives. But Yashoda was probably the main wife, and probably the most beautiful, the kind of the main wife. And his father really wanted him to rule the kingdom in the future. And so his father wanted to prevent him from, you could say, cultivating the way, to really practice and leave the palace. So his father actually gave him 3 palaces. He gave him a palace, so these palaces were for the different seasons of the year. You know, like people have vacation homes, you know, they have a summer home or a winter home, you know, run away from the cold. So his father gave him all these different palaces to go to, so that he would be in very comfortable surroundings. And it said here that he had about 20,000, each of the wives had about 20,000 servants who also were taking care of things. So he was really well taken care of, you know, from looking at the materials. He was really well taken care of. Okay. So if we're going to talk about the story about the Buddha's life, I can share a couple of things, because we actually spent quite a lot of time looking into the Buddha's life in our classes at the university. Especially, we were reading a text called The Life of the Buddha by Ashvaghosha. Ashvaghosha. People know who Ashvaghosha is? Ashvaghosha? He was a very famous Indian writer. People consider him the Shakespeare of Sanskrit. The Shakespeare of Sanskrit. So he wrote a book called the Bodhicitta. And basically, it's verses that say the Buddha's life. And it's very, very beautiful. People recite it as a way of music and telling a story. And so he writes the life of the Buddha, you know, with his beautiful Sanskrit language and it's been translated to English by a scholar. And so it's very interesting reading, you know, this Indian Buddhist writer on the Buddha's life from an Indian cultural perspective. And so it describes his father during this period of time, very interesting, really, really wanting his son to stay in the palace. And so his father would actually go through all these pretty ascetic practices. He would fast, he would pray to the gods, he would really cultivate, you know, like restraining from sense desires and things, and then like really hoping from his prayers and his kind of vigors of cultivation that he would get his son to stay. You know, and then he'd make his son really protected and giving him all the sensual delights, trying to get him to be attached to the sensual world. So it's very interesting reading about it, because it was like his father, you know, given that the Indian culture actually has some Buddhist principles, you could say some of the Buddhist principles we associate with Buddhism, basically how the sensual world traps us. So they had that mentality already in Indian culture, you know, they see that. So it was described how his father was using that, you know, he was trying to catch his son with the sensual world, while at the same time, you know, practicing austerities to try to like use that side too to get his son to stay. Right? And so it goes through this very elaborate story about this process. And maybe I'll say the story a little bit later, what actually happens. But I think Jin Fo Shr will keep going, because the Buddha actually leaves home. So it seems like the king's, all his austerities didn't quite do it. But I'll explain that a little bit later. Okay.
然后这个佛陀他在宫里面非常享受，他也是有时候会想到，因为他很有善根，像刚才讲的12岁，他就去很有慈悲心，就发觉到人真的是很苦。然后后来他在结婚完以后，也出去城门去看一看，然后他有见到这个老人走路非常苦的，拿着拐杖，然后又看到生病的，这个就是讲的4个门东 东西南北，东门看到老人，然后南边看到病人在那里哀叫病很苦然后在西门看到人死了抬了要去埋葬或者去烧后来就又看到另外一个门看到沙门，就是修行的人，他就问说这个为什么修行？他这就是为了要能够解脱我们人的生死离苦得乐的一种方式生活，所以他那时候就开始要探讨要怎样子来出家学道，所以他在19岁的时候他就出家学道去，这样子就是能够去探讨人生方面的痛苦及无常，这样子来解决。
Okay, so Shakyamuni Buddha at that time was Prince Siddhartha, and he lived a very enjoyable life. But however, he had actually. Let me just give how enjoyable his life was. In a later text in the Pali tradition, a hedonist. They describe him as a hedonist, somebody who kind of into the pleasures. Who's kind of like somebody who's really, really indulges his senses. Goes to the Buddha, and kind of tells him, "Why are you restraining from all the sensual pleasures?" The Buddha's response to him was actually very interesting. He said, "You think you enjoy your life. Let me tell you how much I enjoyed my life." So he described his actual life in the pleasures of the palace, and he says, however, all of that is meaningless. It doesn't lead the way out. And he just describes how the sensual pleasures actually don't satisfy. And he says it's like giving a dog, like a bone that has no meat on it. He's gnawing on a bone that just has no meat on it. So it's like you're just gnawing on something, and it doesn't satisfy. So he says the sensual pleasure just like that. And he gave all these analogies about the dangers of the sensual pleasures. So he lived a very enjoyable life at that time. But as Jin Fo Shr was saying, he has a lot of good roots. And so he realizes that there's more. And so he requests to go outside and take a look at the world outside. And he goes through the different, you could say, gates of the city. And so one day he leaves from the eastern gate, and he sees an old man. And as the story goes, he has a charioteer named Chunda, and he asks his charioteer, who is this man? What's his problem? And in this story with Ashvagosha, he actually writes that a deva comes and manifests as this old man, and his charioteer sees it and says, this is old age. And the prince asks him, is this something that is just to this person, or is it something everybody has to face? And his charioteer tells him, actually, it's something we all have to face. You will have to face it too, my prince. And so the Buddha, of course, hears that, goes back to the palace, and is very, very restless. He's concerned. He's paying attention. And then he goes out another day to the southern gate. And again, his father tries to protect the environment, but again, in Ashvagosha's version of the story, he comes down, another god comes down and manifests a sick person. And the Buddha sees the sick person, asks the similar question to his chariot, his driver, and again he gets the response, this is something we all have to face. And so the Buddha again goes, wow, this is something that's pretty dangerous. This is something we really pay attention to. Old age and sickness. The next time he goes out the western gate, and this time he sees death. And this really, you could say, stops the Buddha in his tracks. After he sees that, he goes back. And at this point, his father is really worried. As I said before, his father's going through all these austerities. He's doing his best to keep his son. He's giving him all the sense pleasures while at the same time refraining him from himself to cultivate merit to prevent his son from leaving home or going off and cultivating the way. And so his father is very nervous and really trying to keep his son in the palace. But his son, the prince, is basically, you could say, very, very disturbed. You could say, very concerned. And in the actual Ashvagosha's writing of the story, it actually goes to the internal psychological states of the Buddha. It talks about how the Buddha was really, like, he was really, really paying attention to this. Very, very concerned. And then finally, the fourth time he goes out the gate. So they say the four signs. The four signs. And that's why sometimes they call it the Deva Dutta, I think. The Deva Dutta. The four heavenly messengers. Because this is also in the Theravada tradition. They said that these were manifestations from the gods. Right? His father was trying to protect everything. But the gods were, a little bit, wanted to, you could say, inspire the Buddha to cultivate the way. So they manifested as these signs. And so the fourth sign the Buddha sees is a cultivator of the way, a shramana, you could say a wandering cultivator who dedicated his life to practice. So the Buddha sees this person, and this person tells him, he asks the person, well, who are you? What are you doing? He says, I'm cultivating the way. I'm looking for an answer to birth and death. And the Buddha goes, oh, what do you do? He says, this is my practice, and what I'm doing, you will do as well in the future. And so this really made the Buddha think about what he's doing. And he basically at that point resolved that he will end birth and death. He'll end birth and death, and he's going to not stop until he does so. So that's the story. And it's very interesting to see his response in the text, because it plays out, it's almost like a Buddhist drama, the amount of kind of internal transformation that's going on when the Buddha makes his Bodhi resolve. And there's one really interesting piece about it, which is that when the Buddha sees old age, sickness, and death, he doesn't, in the text actually, he doesn't become dejected. He doesn't become prideful of his youth, thinking, oh, I'm really young, old age will never affect me. He doesn't get prideful of his good health. I'm really healthy. Oh, I won't get sick, no problem. But instead, he actually sees it for what it is and says, I'm going to end it. I'm going to find a solution. He doesn't become depressed. He doesn't become cynical. He doesn't become despondent. So when we look at that, what's really interesting is just what's our experience looking at old age, sickness, and death, is that oftentimes we see the troubles of the world, and our response is, you could say, depression, right? We get depressed. We go, oh, this world is horrible, miserable. We get depressed. Or we might get kind of prideful, like, oh, this world is really horrible, but I'm still okay, no problem. I'm still young, I'm still healthy, I'm in a very good environment, I've got a lot, and I can just enjoy my life. We say eat, drink, and be merry, right? We just enjoy our life and just ignore what's going to happen, right? But the Buddha doesn't do that. The Buddha says he's going to find a way out. And what I see from that move of his aspiration is that it comes from a really deep inner confidence. He has a deep inner confidence that there is a way out, that there is a way that he can discover. And so I think for us who are interested in studying the Dharma and want to practice, that in a way there's that deep faith in the potential for awakening, that when he sees those problems in the world of old age, sickness, and death that is all there before us, he has an inner faith that I can find a way out of this. And then when he saw a cultivator practicing it, doing that, he said, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. And so this is what you would say is what's bringing him to cultivate the way, right? His aspiration. So for us, I think we can use the same principle. When we see old age, sickness, and death, I think we've seen quite a bit of things happening these last few days in Paris. And how do we respond? We want to respond with depression, and we don't want to respond with pride or anger. But in fact, if we really make the Bodhi resolve to awaken and be able to rescue and help living beings, then we can really go.
很好，金传师他把这个生老病死的这个讲得非常生动。再继续就是佛陀他19岁出家学道，然后参访了6年，讲起来参访6年，然后他自己也做了苦行6年，总共12年。 12年再加上19的话，就31岁，他就成道了。那有的经书讲29岁的话，我想这个我觉得19岁是非常合理，因为你跟他看我们仙公上人，仙公上人也是19岁出家的，然后西印老和尚19岁剃度，17岁的时候就离开他2个过房的这个妻子，没有同房的这个妻子，19岁也是剃度出家了。所以我想这个讲19岁他是出家学道，我觉得是非常正确的。然后他说法了就是成道以后，他说法49年，80岁涅槃。
So the Buddha, 19 years old, left the palace, renounced the world, and went to study with various ascetic teachers. So he studied with various ascetic teachers for 6 years. So I'll give a little bit of commentary as well. This is from Ashvaghosha. So he goes and meets these ascetic teachers, and so in Ashvaghosha's writing, the Buddha is like this super radiant, well-loved prince. The whole country becomes sad and despondent and depressed. Like everybody's crying and sad. The charioteer goes back to the city, and he's very, very ashamed of himself. People are like, "Look, how can you let the Buddha leave? We wanted to keep him here." And so, he finally gets a way out. He says, "I didn't do it. What happened? The gods confused me. He left the palace and everybody was guarding the gates, and he got out somehow. It seems like a miracle." So he gets a little bit of, he doesn't has to take all the blame. But basically everybody's very, very sad. And so the Buddha goes off as a cultivator, and he goes into the forest, and the ascetics have the same experience seeing him. They go, "Wow, this person is really amazing. He's a really good cultivator." And as he goes through and he's talking to these ascetics, they explain to him the practice about how they cultivate all these ascetics, and in the future they'll go through these heavens, and it's very blissful. So he goes, "How does that work?" He says, "If you're in this life and you're saying that you're cultivating all the sensual pleasures and things and the comforts of the life, and you're saying that's not very dharmic, that's not proper dharma, then how is it that you're not cultivating? If you're saying you're refraining from that now, but later that's for the purpose of having comfort and pleasure later." Says doesn't make sense. Why is it that you don't do that now but you do it later? That doesn't seem to make sense to me. So he says that's not ultimate. I don't want to follow that. The ascetics all follow behind him, wishing that he would stay, but he says, "I have to find a way out." So he goes to various teachers, and these teachers teach him basically how to enter very, very subtle states of samadhi, or the formless samadhis. If people are familiar with the Buddha's teachings, there's the 4 dhyanas, and then there's the 4 formless samadhis. And so these teachers teach him the highest 2 formless samadhis, the samadhi, I think, of nothing whatsoever, and neither thought nor non-thought. So these very, very subtle, refined states of samadhi. But again, the Buddha masters these and says and the teachers recognize him and say, "You're really skilled in these. You know what I know. Can you stay and teach with me? I'll give you half of my teaching duties. You'll be equal with me." And the Buddha says, "Sorry, I have to find an answer to birth and death. So he goes off and he practices the ascetic practices. And Jin Fo Shr said he practices asceticism for 6 years. He thinks the way out of suffering then, I had extreme sensual pleasures. Well, that didn't work. That's not the way out. So I have to refrain from sensual desires completely, as much as possible." And it comes from, you could say, really extreme ascetic practices. So he, for 6 years, practiced extreme asceticism, eating very, very little, and basically almost to the point of death. So basically, at the point of death, he basically realizes, I am about to die, and I still haven't woken up yet. and he thinks, so this is not the way out. So he decides to have a little bit of food, and he takes a little bit of food, enough to sustain himself, and then he resolves himself to cultivate the way. He resolves to cultivate the way, and so basically, at that point, he's, if you say 12 years old plus 19 years old is 31 years old. He then, at that point, realized the way, he awakens. Jin Fo Shr was just saying how he thinks different places say at different ages the Buddha left home, maybe at 19, maybe at 29. But it seems it makes some sense looking at some of the more modern masters that we know in our own tradition. Venerable Master Hua became a monk about 19 years old, and Venerable Master Empty Cloud, Shuying Lao Hasang, you could say left his family. His father also gave him 2 wives, but he basically didn't have any relationship really with them. And then at 19 years old, or 17 years old, he kind of ran away from home. And at 19 years old, he actually left home. He shaved his head and became a monk. And so 19 seems to be fairly reasonable in terms of a date. And just maybe another interesting story about the Buddha's awakening was when he was awakened, Mara comes, right? People know Mara, which is the kind of the Buddha's, in the Buddhist tradition, the kind of, they call him the evil one. He's the one in the 6th desire heaven, which is the heaven that gets happiness, kind of pulls on the energy of the sensual pleasures that people experience. So basically, they want people to be trapped, or living beings to be trapped in samsara, so they can kind of live off of their kind of energy. So Mara is seen as this person who wants to trap people in samsara. And so the Buddha, right before awakening, is basically getting out of Mara's realm of control. And so he comes with his legions of armies, and they're described with like scary weapons, bulging eyes, fiery heads, and all these things. And they're about to attack the Buddha. And it describes all the other gods who are around, really respecting the Buddha, see Mara come and they're all afraid and they run away, far away, and they observe from the distance, watching what's going to happen. And so basically the Buddha is able to quell the Mara's armies and also transform Mara's daughters. If people know the story, right? He basically doesn't move at all. He doesn't fight with them. It actually teaches them. He looks at it, has no fear, so they don't actually affect him at all. For the daughters, he sees them, and he shows, one day you will become old and die as well. So their power also does not have any control of him. And then finally, he goes through these different stages of awakening. He sees his own past lives, and sees all the cycle that he went through in the past, all the ways he went through. Then he sees, his vision expands to see the past lives of all beings. He sees the past lives and all the conditions of all living beings. And then he has insight into the 12 conditioned links. And he says these are the 3 super knowledges that allow him to wake up. And then he also wakes up to becoming a Buddha. And then he goes, and the story goes that he thinks what I realize is too profound to teach. And so he thinks to himself, maybe I don't want to teach in a way so that people will slander it. So I don't know if I'm going to teach it. And of course, at that point, one of the Brahmin gods come down and request Dharma from him, and he begins to teach. And as Jin Fo Shr just said, he taught for 49 years. So if you add the ages, 19 years old, plus 6 years learning from different teachers, 6 years from these ascetic practices, and then plus another 49, you get a life of 80 years. So the Buddha lived to be 80 years old.
刚才金禅师也讲了，修苦行的不是能够正道的一个方式，应该是写中道才是真正的。所以他那时候他去参访6年，然后修苦行6年，真的修的是非常有看过照片的那个，真的是瘦的不成人形 所以这个不是后来他就不是能够修行成果的，所以他就放弃。放弃以后，他就后来接受了这个牧羊女他给他的一个供养，就是用乳还有一些煮一些稀饭，然后这个牧羊女叫做梳头家，所以后来他就在那个菩提树下又做了49天，就是在12月8号的过了，就是要天亮的时候就开悟了，所以那时候是31岁的时候。
So, so during this process of practice, the Buddha was cultivating various ascetic practices, but as was mentioned before, he did realize that this kind of extreme ascetic practices was not going to have him become enlightened. And he was really cultivating ascetic practices really vigorously. I've seen the pictures, and in those pictures, he looked really bad. I'm guessing those are the statues, right? All the statues we see of the Buddha during that time. And he really didn't even look like a person. You know, he's got his skeleton bones all sticking out. So what he realized was that he needed to cultivate the middle way. And the middle way is basically not going to extremes, is to really practice so that you don't attach. And so at that point, he let go of his extreme ascetic practices and decided that he would receive an offering. And at this point, a young girl made an offering of milk porridge to the Buddha. And this food was a sustenance for him to cultivate. And so under the Bodhi tree, he cultivated for 49 days. And on December 8th, is this the lunar? This is lunar, right? Lunar. I think it's the lunar calendar, the 12th lunar month, the 8th day in the 12th lunar month. Right before daybreak, the Buddha awoke up. And at this time, he was 31 years old.
就是我们常常会吃到腊八粥，就是12月8号，那个就是在圣城他们都会煮出来，就是有纪念的，就是腊八粥12月8号。
So December, or the 8th of the 12th lunar month, we have, oftentimes we commemorate this event by drinking labato, which I guess is kind of a little bit like a milk porridge. So at CDDB, they serve this on the 8th of the 12th lunar month. I can see Jing Fo Shr and me and Jing Fo Shr have no idea. Probably they do, we just don't know. Oh, we're just serving porridge today, okay? So, yeah.
腊八粥是很好吃的，它里面都一个粥组成的粥，里面有那个红枣啊，什么枣子啊，都各方面算比较有类似，比较稍微甜甜的。其实不只是圣城有，其实在一般民间都有，因为要过年冬天的时候吃暖和身体。补营养，腊八粥这个是12月8号的。
So we were joking over it, but the 8th of the 12th lunar month, they serve this kind of porridge, and it's like kind of a special porridge. It actually tastes very good. They put like red dates in it. It's a little bit sweet. It's got a lot of various kind of other ingredients that makes it very nutritious and healthy. And it's really good because during this time of the year, it's very cold. And so it's very warm for the body. It makes you healthy and strong. However, I don't know how many people got enlightened though for eating it at the CDDB. Yeah, he says this is a tradition even in other places in China. People would drink this kind of labazo, this kind of porridge.
所以另外一个很重要的，我们学习佛法。最重要也是要发心，就是你发菩提心，发菩提心就是像今天中午有人在问这个怎样子来发菩提心， 菩提心的意义是什么？然后就是其实发菩提心就是一个大道心，然后这个就是你一定要用非常正道，能够你做像做好事啊说好话啊，然后就这些的你要做好一切，然后你到最后的要做到究竟圆满，就是要能够脱离最重要是能够脱离三界，这个是最重要的一个发心。
So we're talking about really making the Bodhi resolve. And at lunchtime today, somebody asked the question, what is the Bodhi resolve? How does one make the Bodhi resolve? In my response, I talked about how this Bodhi resolve was a resolve for the great way, a Da Dao Xing. Dao is the Chinese character for way. Da is big, the great. So the great way, the Da Dao. And when we want to cultivate on the great way, we want to have a really proper mindset. We want to do good deeds. And when we really perfect our goodness and complete it, then we can really aspire to, or we say, well, we really complete it, we're doing good. We also need to aspire to be able to transcend the three realms, the realms of form, formless realms, and the desire realms. We want to leave the three realms.
好讲到这个佛陀释迦牟尼佛，他发心是在三大阿僧祇劫以前，那时候他也是一个非常精进的修行的菩萨，他那时候也就开始行菩萨道，然后他也是要希望能够以后能够成佛，这个是他最初的一个发心。这个其实那时候的一个最早就是所碰到的，就是我们知道燃灯佛跟他受记的，因为燃灯佛其实燃灯佛也有人叫他电光佛，他有一天燃灯佛他出去，然后那时候就是我们佛陀就是那时候他是一个婆罗门的梵志，就是修行的人，就趴在地上，然后用自己的头发铺在地上，给这个燃灯佛走过，就是不要给他的脚去弄脏了，所以后来就非常燃灯佛非常感动，就跟他授记，你将来就是在91劫以后的贤劫就可以成佛，然后就是叫做释迦牟尼佛，这个在经典上可以去在像本恨集经上都可以查得到的。
So the Buddha made the Bodhi resolve 3 Asamkhya kalpas ago. Asamkhya literally translates to countless, and kalpa is a word for eon in Sanskrit. So 3 countless eons ago, the Buddha made the Bodhi resolve. And at that time, he was, you could say, already a very vigorous cultivator, a person who practiced the way. And at that time, if people know the story, he met a Buddha, and the Buddha's name was Landan Fo, or Burning Lamp Buddha. I think in Sanskrit it might be Dipankara. Is that right? Do people know? Please correct me if my Sanskrit is wrong. I think it's Dipankara Buddha at that time. And basically, the Buddha was walking, and at that time the Shakyamuni Buddha at that time was actually a Brahmin, and he saw the Buddha walking, and he saw a puddle of mud, a kind of a dirty area in front of him. And so what does he do? Like, what will we do? We would probably maybe look for something, maybe say, stop, don't walk there, it's really dirty, maybe go somewhere else. All right. So what does the Shakyamuni Buddha do at that previous life as a Brahmin? He actually went and laid down in the mud so that the Buddha could walk over him. And then he realized, though, there was still a little bit left that that was still muddy that the Buddha had to walk on. So what did he do? He untied his hair, and pulled it and put it in the dirt, in the mud, so that the Buddha could walk all the way across without getting dirty. So you can imagine, right? If you get mud in your hair, that's really miserable. And so the Pankara Buddha saw this and said, wow, your vows to become a Buddha in the future, they will become fulfilled. They will be successful. And he said 91 eons later, 91 kalpas later, and the kalpa named the worthy kalpa, which is our kalpa right now, called the worthy kalpa, you will become a Buddha named Shakyamuni Buddha. So the Buddha gave him, you could say, a prediction at that time. In our classes, we sometimes say maybe it might be another good way to translate what a prediction is like a confirmation, because it's not so much like the Buddha's giving you a prediction, saying that's the Buddha is doing it to you, is that he sees the sincerity of the resolve of Shakyamuni Buddha at the time, and because he sees that seed, he knows, I can confirm this is what's going to happen to you in the future. So it's that resolve of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha at that time, that is able to propel him into the future to realize Buddhahood.
佛陀他成佛的时候，讲了一句很重要的话，对我们修行，要非常注意，就是说，在开悟以后，他就发觉说，一切的众生都有如来的德性，因为就是说，因为执着，不能够证得，所以一些我们的要知道这个执着妄想是非常关系到这个开悟成佛跟众生的这个，因为我们就是太执着在世间上，在太执着我们一切的东西放不下，这个是非常关键的一个他开悟的时候所讲的话。
So the Buddha, or Shakyamuni Buddha, so when he actually realized the way, when he realized Buddhahood, he said something that was very important for all of us in our cultivation. He says, all living beings have the Buddha nature, have this potential for awakening. However, they're unable to realize it because of their attachments and their, you could say, false thinking or deluded thinking. That's why they can't realize it. So this is a very important principle for us, is so that what's preventing us from waking up, what's obstructing us, is because of all our attachments. All those things we can't put down. We're too attached and enmeshed in this world of suffering and samsara.
所以我们众生就是有各种的放不下，就产生各种的苦恼。假说我们能够放下，就是回头是岸。所以讲就是苦海无边，回头是岸，这个是一个非常重要的。
So living beings, all of us, have many, many things we just can't put down. And those things we can't put down end up causing us a lot of suffering. However, if we really can put those things down, let go, then there's a saying that says, the turn of the head is the other shore. And if you unpack that, it's basically, we're just constantly looking at suffering and getting attached and doing all the things that are upside down. But if we could just turn around and face, you can say maybe face the Buddha, face awakening, let go, then just that turning is where we will be crossed over. Crossing over meaning we'll be, you can say liberated, freed. Just that act of turning. So we're just constantly to be turning turning away from our confusion towards awakening.
在修行的高僧里面，有一位赵州禅师啊，他非常有修行，他也有人称他是古佛再来的，然后他也非常有智慧，也非常幽默，就是希望能够给人能够走向真正的自解方面，然后这个禅师他也活到120几岁，所以在唐朝的时候，人家就称他为真迹大师。下面我有一个公案跟大家分享一下。
So there's a Chan master that I'd like to share with everybody named Zhao Zhe. And Zhao Zhou. Oh, like the California state. Zhou Zhao Chansi. He is a Chan master, and he was so well known and so accomplished that he later received the you could say the epithet, the title, the accolade of ancient Buddha. He's an ancient Buddha, and his teachings were very wise and also very humorous, and he really taught the true path. And he lived to be 120 years old, actually, like Venerable Master Empty Cloud. He lived a very long life. He lived in the Tang Dynasty, and he has some stories which I would like to share with everyone here.
有一个信众啊，就问赵州禅师说：“佛陀有苦恼吗？”那赵州答说，毫不犹豫的说：“有。”
So in this story, a disciple goes to this Chan master and says, "Does the Buddha have suffering and afflictions? Does he have worries and concerns?" And the Chan master says, "Yes."
那这个信众他就觉得满头不了解的，然后说：“怎么会有苦恼呢？佛陀是解脱的人，怎么会有苦恼呢？”那赵州禅师说：“是因为你还没有开悟，还没有得度。”
So the disciple, so you can imagine us, right? We're the disciple, and we're going to like a Chan master, like Master Hua, and so we're confused. We go, how can that be? How can the Buddha have afflictions and suffering? How can that be the case? And so the Chan master says, it's just because you're not awakened.
所以他还在度他，所以他有烦恼。
He says that's because he's still trying to save you, so he has affliction.
那个人又说：“假如我修行得度了，我修行成功了，我得度了，那佛陀还有苦恼吗？”那赵州禅师又干脆说：“有。”
So this disciple says, "Oh, okay. So if I cultivate the way, I realize awakening. So then the Buddha, will he have any afflictions or problems anymore?" And then the Chan master says, "Yes, he still has problems."
那信众他就更迷惑了。那既然我已经得度了，佛陀为什么还有苦恼？那赵州禅师说：“因为还有一切的众生啊。”
So he says, this disciple is even more confused. He says, "How come? If I'm already enlightened, how can the Buddha be concerned and worried and in difficulty?" And the Chan master says, "That's because there's all these other living beings."
好，然后他这个信众还是一直在追问，那一切众生，那就讲这个要完全能够度尽，是佛陀是度不尽的，所以佛陀会永远在苦恼的里面吗？是他无法超越吗？那赵州禅师说，已经超越，已经没有苦恼了。
So this disciple says, "Oh, so living beings are limitless, they're boundless, you can't save them all. So does that mean the Buddha is going to be in suffering and affliction forever? he'll never get out. And the Chan Master says, the Buddha already doesn't have any suffering and affliction.
那这个信众又最后问说，众生未度尽，佛陀为什么没有苦恼呢？照州禅师回答说，佛陀的自性中的众生都已经度尽了。
So the disciple says, 众生，这时候还没有度尽，对不对？
Yeah.
Wait. The living beings still haven't all been saved. How come the Buddha doesn't have any suffering and afflictions? The Chan Master says, well, that's because the Buddha has already saved all the living beings in his nature. They all have been crossed over. That's the exchange.
好，这就是一个禅的公案。下面我想说，我们修心最重要也是要常常能够回光返照自己的心念。刚才讲的这个就是回头是岸，能够常常回光返照，不要去外面去求，这个是最重要的。我想也讲一个公案。
So in our cultivation, what's very important is that we turn the light and reflect within. This principle is very similar to the idea of we just turn our head around, and just that turning is the other shore. We can see that we're at the other shore. And so there's another story that illustrates this principle.
就是有一个也是有修行，也常常去庙寺，他也看过很多的佛菩萨的像，然后他也当然像我们今天观音法会，他也知道观世音菩萨像长得怎样子。那有一天呢，他出去走一走，所以他就在外面走走，然后就下雨了。下雨的时候就看到下雨，然后他看到什么观世音菩萨也在那里来了。他因为他看过观音菩萨的像，他说那个很像观音菩萨。
Okay, so this story is about a cultivator who's seen many, many Buddha images. He's very familiar with various Buddha and Bodhisattva images. And so, similar to like everybody here coming for the Guanyin recitation today, he recognizes our Guanyin Bodhisattva in the back of our hall. He knows what Guanyin Bodhisattva looks like. So one day he was outside, it was raining, and in the rain he sees somebody coming, and he sees, it's Guanyin Bodhisattva. So what's Guanyin Bodhisattva doing out here in the rain?
所以他就不放过这个好的机会，要求观音菩萨要度他，然后他就讲大慈大悲的观世音菩萨，请你救度我一下。那个观音菩萨，他那时候因为是下雨嘛，他说那观音菩萨在下雨中，他拿着雨伞过来。那个人就那时候他是在屋檐底下，所以他就观音菩萨那个人要求要度他嘛，要度他当然要度一下，当然也是说能够给他一些机会再怎样子来解脱。那观音菩萨说：“我在雨中你在屋檐底下，我这里有雨，你那里没有雨。”你那里没有雨，你为什么何必要我度你呢？
屋檐是什么意思？就是 under
屋檐。
What? Of a house? The eaves? The eaves. Okay. So this cultivator says, I don't want to miss this opportunity to be saved by Guanyin Bodhisattva. So he says to Guanyin Bodhisattva, great compassionate, great kindness, Guanyin Bodhisattva, please come and save me. So Guanyin Bodhisattva comes to him. She's holding an umbrella in the rain. And he's actually under an eave of a house, so he's got a lot of protection. And she looks at him and says, I'm out here in the rain. You're under an eave. Why do you need me to go and save you? You're not in the rain at all.
然后那个人又不死心，然后从屋檐底下又跑出来，在大雨里面，然后他就说：“我现在人在雨中， 菩萨你要慈悲救度我吧。
So this person doesn't want to miss his opportunity. So he runs outside into the rain and says this rain is really, really big rain. And so he says, "Oh, I'm out in the rain now. Now you can come and save me."
那观音菩萨说，还是不行。那个人说，为什么呢？
So the Guanyin Bodhisattva says, "I still can't save you." And the person says, "Why not?"
然后那个我们观音菩萨就讲说，我们现在都在雨中啊，我没有淋雨，是因为我有带了一个雨伞。那你被淋雨，是因为你没有带雨伞。这样看来是伞在渡我，你找一只伞，然后所以这样子去伞去渡你吧。
So Guanyin Bodhisattva says, "Oh, because we're now both in the rain, and I'm in the rain, you're in the rain, and I'm not getting rained on because of the umbrella in my hand, and it's keeping the rain out. You don't have an umbrella, so I'm being saved by this umbrella. So you should go find an umbrella, and that umbrella can come and save you."
所以那个人也没有观世音菩萨也没理他，所以那个人就淋了好像落汤鸡一样，所以菩萨也没有渡他。然后那个人就说：“真是一个自私鬼。”
So that person, the Guanyin Bodhisattva then leaves, and he gets all rained on, and he's soaked through and through. And he thinks, "Gosh, that is the person was a really selfish ghost."
然后这一位菩萨听了也不生气，然后就看见他真的也没有什么开悟，但是他还是要找机会去启发他，所以就过了几天，他们又在庙寺里面的一个佛殿里面见面了。
So hearing that, Guanyin Bodhisattva didn't get angry at all, but she still had a heart to want to help him. And one day they were in the temple and they met again.
然后观音菩萨看到他人，他就去用自己双手就是palm together，就是合掌，然后对着自己的像在祷告。然后那个人看了就说：“哦，菩萨你怎么样子了？你怎么对自己在祷告啊？”
So Guanyin Bodhisattva goes in front of image of Guanyin Bodhisattva and starts bowing and praying in front of the image. And this person sees it and goes, "Guanyin Bodhisattva, what are you doing? Why are you praying to Guanyin Bodhisattva? Why are you praying to yourself?"
他这个观音菩萨讲说：“我因为有遇到了麻烦的事情，不知道怎样子解决才好，所以我跑来自己跟自己来祷告。”
She said, "Oh, because I met a difficult situation and I don't know what to do about it. So I'm coming to pray to myself to find an answer."
所以这个那个人他一听到原来是这样子，原来是要度他，他自己就明白菩萨意的一片苦心，所以真的要求人，还不如求自己。所以佛是要叫我们自己要自度的一个道理，就像我们今天也一样，我们要多念佛，多念佛，自己种一些善根，这个是非常重要的。
So he realized at that point that she came to really help him, that the principle is that we really have to save ourselves. And so together we're reciting the Buddha's name, but we really want to cultivate so that we can plant out the seeds so we really can save ourselves. So you can say that's the principle of the story.
后面我们再继续把佛陀的事迹讲完。Yeah.
Okay. So we'll continue a little bit more with the Buddha's story.
好，那就是说佛陀他一生里面呢，49年他讲经300多会， 然后他要度的，他都已经有度了，然后没有度的都也一样的已经做了度的因缘，这个是很重要的。所以我们像现在我们在学习经典佛的佛经经典，像观无量寿经，这个就是我们一个很好的以后能够得度的因缘，学习的这个机会，所以大家要认真的。
So his life, the Buddha taught for 49 years, and he taught over 300 times. And he basically rescued all those people that he was, you could say, meant to rescue, that he was supposed to rescue. And those people he was unable to really help in that ultimate way, he had already planted affinities with them, the kind of the seeds to help them in the future. So for us here studying the Limitless Life Sutra is really valuable because it's a chance for us to plant down the seeds so that in the future we also will have the opportunity to be, you could say, helped or saved by the Buddha.
最后我想我们还是再介绍一个，就是他佛陀圆寂的情况，就是他80岁往生，然后在基士那杰楼城的一个沙楼双树下在中夜的时候头面向北头向北面向西呈吉祥卧做往生的。
头往北，面往西。
对，他是面向西。
所以他背是往北。
不是头向北了，他的头朝北。
哦，面向西。哦，西。Okay.
So
maybe the last thing is the Buddha's end of his life when he entered Nirvana, peri-Nirvana. This was when he was 80 years old, and he passed away. I think it's in Kushinagar, and he was between two solitaries, and this was he entered Nirvana. 中夜 at night, middle of night, midnight, in the middle of the night, at midnight, and his head was facing north, and his face was facing west, and he was in the, you could say, the jishang, what was it called? Just laying down posture, basically lying on your right side. We can see the Buddha image in the Buddha altar in the back of the Venerable Master. You'll see is in that posture, and so the Buddha was in that posture when he entered peri-Nirvana.
这个中夜圆寂就是表示中道之意然后这个北头向北头北方是为尊的这个所以我们看很多的都是在北方建立像什么京都北京这样子，那北方为尊贵的。然后面向西呢，就是说我们要给人家我们要求生西方的意思。所以像善财童子53参华严经的，到最后都是要求生西方，然后以表示西方极乐世界是最圆满的。
So why pass away at 12 at the middle of the night? The middle represents the middle way, and his head was facing in the north, and that is because the north is, you could say, the most respected, as the highest, and in the facing west represents how, in the end, what's very important is that we seek rebirth in the Western Pure Land. And even in the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Pure Youth Sudana, in the end, he is taught by all the various teachers. The final teachings was to seek rebirth in the Pure Land. So really for all of us to be able to seek rebirth in the land of utmost happiness, that's a very good thing to do.
好后面我想稍微声明一下 上一次我有讲到一个Stanford 的故事，那个是我从网络上看到的，就是从那个是北京清华应该是清华大学，他一个家言，就是给人家有能够鼓励的一些故事，所以我在那边看到这个Stanford 的故事。那后来金传师他们也查了，其实那个是一个谣传，有一个误传也好，谣传也好，就是不是真正的。我想真正的金传师能够把它说明一下好了。
Okay, so last week we talked a little bit of a story about how, if people remember the story about how Stanford was established, Stanford University was established with his two parents going to, that family going to Harvard and kind of have this interaction. And so Jin Fo Shr said that he found this story on the web with, I think, one of the major universities in China, in Beijing, and they kind of have various stories of kind of inspiring stories. So he found this story, and actually, so he said later, I told him that actually that wasn't really a real story. It was actually a rumor, and so he wanted me to say the real story. Actually, I didn't know either. That's why I just kind of said the story, and my mom happened to be in the lecture that night, and so afterwards she came to me and said, "How come you don't even know your own history for your school? That never happened." I said, "Really? I have no idea." And so he said, "No, there's a whole history like place in your school that had, a history of Stanford University and such and such and such, and that's not a story there." So I said, "Oh, okay." And so I went to check online to, just double check. That's what we always do. I Google something, right? And the first thing that came up was, did this happen? And it was in like this kind of urban legends kind of website. And so it describes, actually, this never happened. It said, because, the Stanford family was actually a very wealthy family. They wouldn't go and, kind of dressed fairly poorly to visit Harvard. Their son never went to Harvard. He died at like 16, And what actually, they said, and it was actually also very inspiring, it said when their child died, the Stanford, the parents said, "We'll take the children of California. They'll take the children of California as our children." So that's why they established Stanford University. And actually, this rumor is so, so prevalent. In fact, even on the Stanford website, on their describing their history, they actually also say, "This never happened. There is a rumor that says this, and it never happened." So it's not a. I can see Jin Fo Shr probably found some translation. Somebody found it online and then translated to Chinese, and so it's so popular that it's already spread all over. That even the official website has a disclaimer about this particular urban legend, about this story. So, what's real, what's false, we never know.
好，我们今天大概就讲到这里无量寿经然后我想跟大家讲一下，就是我们下个月12、13号，我们有佛二的一个法会，就是12月12跟13，礼拜六跟礼拜天，我们有八关斋戒，就像今天一样有八关斋戒，然后有可以写牌位，然后就想跟大家有这个消息，然后我们一年一次的这个佛期，不要放过这个佛期的机会。
So, want to make an announcement on December 12th, December 13th, in about a month's time, actually almost pretty exactly a month's time, we'll have an Amitabha recitation weekend here in Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, Saturday and Sunday, and we'll also transmit 8 precepts, just like today. So it's a very good opportunity to come to the monastery and practice together, to recite Amitabha Buddha's name. I think we only do it once a year, so it's a a rare opportunity to come to Berkeley Monastery to practice Amitabha recitation together. It's a good time to do it. We'll also make an announcement. Tomorrow, I'll actually be going down to San Jose Public Library, and we have I mentioned it last week as well, there's a panel titled Bringing Generations Together, How Parents and Children Can Learn from Each Other. And this panel consists of, as I mentioned, my mother, myself, and my good friend from high school and who also went to college with me, Jonathan. And so the three of us are going to be talking a little bit about how to bring the generations together. And so I think this is a very important topic for our area, given that I think in modern times, there's a kind of a feeling of isolation and pressure. A lot of things are kind of going on, and our roots of humanity that comes a lot of them from the relationships that we have with our elders, with our parents, and even with the young people, are being lost in the society because of all the things that society is pulling us out to do. And so I think the hope is that we want to really look carefully at that relationship and how to go about it in modern times so that it can really be nurtured and become something of a source of strength and humanity for us in modern times. So that'll be tomorrow, which is Sunday, from 2 to 4 p.m. at the San Jose Public Library. You probably can Google it to get the address. And I think a flyer will probably put on the wall or something here. Okay, am I forgetting anything? Is there anything else that needs to be said that's going on this Monday? So there's Buddhism for the Modern Mind this Monday. Do you know what the topic is? No what topic. So if people are interested in, if you have a modern mind and you want to learn some Buddhism, that will be a good place for you. Okay. If there's nothing else, we will do our transference of merit. It's on the back of your sheet. Back of your sheet here. Actually, next week, Rev Heng Sure has arrived back in Australia, so he will be here for the Sutra lecture on the screen above us, talking to everybody, seeing who's here. So if people get a chance, definitely come back and we will be able to study the Dharma together. No, he's going to come back virtually on the screen. You come virtually back on the screen here. Yeah, he'll come back virtually. Yeah. The spiritual power of go-to meeting. Okay, so the dedication of merit is here, and I think people know that there's definitely a lot of suffering happening around the world. I know people's your relatives might be ill or sick or going through different troubles or difficulties. I think there's a lot of suffering happening in Europe right now around all the terrorist attacks and things. So wherever you can send your goodness to, we're here in a very safe environment, very peaceful, studying the Dharma together. And this is not easy. And so we can share our blessings with others. So if you can put your palms together and your heart single-minded, we can transfer merit to all living beings. Living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving you their minds away to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, may